Hello and welcome to the Social Workers Rise podcast. Today we are joined by Mr. Justin Gillespie. How do you say your last name?
You have known me for how long now? I
I
still
know,
can't
I'm
do it.
terrible.
It's fine. It's fine. It's Gillespie.
Gillespie, yes. We're recording at the end of the day. My brain is kind of fried, to be honest, but we're going to have fun during this interview. So thank you
To
for
be
joining
fair
us,
with
Justin.
Catherine, I don't usually go by my last name at all. So it's like she probably just knows me as my first name or my username or usernames.
Yeah.
Because I've changed them all over the years, but yeah.
I know. Like now you have 3 email addresses. When I sent you the notes, I'm like, Justin, and then you said, I still didn't get it. I'm like, oh man, okay.
This is the main one that's staying, so just keep this one.
Okay, yeah. And you can connect with Justin. He's at ADHD therapist _J. And today we're going to be talking about how to work with people, specifically adults who have ADHD. And just as kind of a side note, if you are interested in more information on how to work with children who have ADHD, Justin does have an entire course that you can learn more about that topic. So first, let's start off with Justin. Who are you and what do you do?
Yeah, so my name is Justin. Obviously, by now you caught on to that. So I'm a therapist in Michigan and a licensed clinical social worker. My main specialty is ADHD. More specifically, for my own specialty, it's become ADHD in adults, and by total accident, it's been ADHD adults who are also women. So that's just kind of how that happened, totally on accident, but it worked out really great. I own Superior Center. That is my group practice where we primarily focus on ADHD. We are the leading provider for ADHD in adults and the leading provider for adult women with ADHD, which you will not see very often when it comes to ADHD, which we'll get into later in this episode, because ADHD is often thought of as a childhood disorder. So I'm very proud to say that over 50% of my client load, let alone even my other therapist client loads even, are over half adults. So I thought that was really cool when I made this practice.
Yeah, that is really cool. So if we are unfamiliar with ADHD, can you just give us a brief overview about what it is and what are some of the key indicators that somebody may have ADHD? Because this does go undiagnosed a lot. Is that right?
Yeah, it goes undiagnosed a lot, especially if you don't catch it in childhood. There's a ton of adults that go throughout life without getting their diagnosis up until their 30s, 40s, 50s. And so, some key things that you want to keep track of, whether it's a child, a teenager, or an adult, the 3 components that you're going to see as far as behavior really go. It's going to be inattentiveness, hyperactivity, and impulsivity. So, inattentiveness, can't pay attention, hyperactivity, can't sit still, and then impulsivity, not thinking things through, is kind of how I just kind of sum those up to be the easy, quick guide to look through things, right? So if you're seeing symptoms like that, not to say by default that means they have ADHD, but that's a good indicator to think that while you're working with someone, hey, maybe this person could have ADHD that we're seeing.
Okay. How does this show up in their lives? I mean, are they, does this mean that they struggle with work? Do they struggle at home or with relationships? Like, can you give us some examples?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I mean, at work, you're going to see a lot of duties that are often behind. I'm thinking of my job as a social worker and a therapist, right? So we do a lot of documentation, a lot of paperwork. You'll see a lot of people who have ADHD in these type of fields that are very much struggling to keep up with paperwork loads. They're struggling to keep up with deadlines. Maybe they're struggling even despite whatever industry they're in. Maybe they're struggling to get to work on time. You have a lot of different relationship challenges, whether that's peer relationships, dating relationships, anything like that. You'll see a lot of the time, this is more on the hyperactive side or the combined presentation side, where you'll see an ADHD, but you'll see a lot of fidgeting and a lot of movement. You'll even see, like if you're watching this on video later, I fidget quite a bit when I move. You'll see my head kind of back and forth. I'm often moving my hands off camera, doing something like this. We have a very hard time sitting still. And then for the inattentive side, a big one that I always tell people is you could be talking to that person right to their face, looking right at them. They're making direct eye contact with you, and it's almost like they're not listening. when in fact they are. In fact, a lot of times with ADHD, one of the reasons that this happens is because of slower processing speeds. So it's kind of like the brain hears the sounds, but they don't have a picture painted in the brain until a few seconds later. So you'll often hear these people, you'll talk with them, you'll say something to them, and this is my favorite phrase with anyone I'm with. Catherine, you've probably seen this happen before, where I'll be like, wait, what? And then you'll repeat half what you're saying, and they'll be like, oh, yeah, I got it, because it comes in a little bit sooner, right? Or a little bit faster, I should say. So those are some key things that you could just see right off the bat with individuals with ADHD, and that's pretty much across children, teens, and adults. As far as in the adult world, often we can't keep relationships long. We often don't keep jobs very long. I have had a new job up until I started my practice until about, it was almost like grade levels for me. So it was like I just had a new job like every single year, and we just get bored very easily, let's just say. So those are kind of
Okay.
like the summary points for to look out for someone with ADHD, maybe.
Okay. Okay. That makes sense. Thank you. And thank you for sharing about, a little bit about your own experience. What I'm curious, what is it that you wish that more people knew about working with this population?
Yeah, well, I want them to realize that these are people who are actually capable of really great things. So whether you're working with a child or a teen or an adult, we more so see the side of things with teens, with as far as like stigma when it comes to ADHD. Whenever you see someone with ADHD, especially if they're a boy and a boy of color, you'll often get this stigma against them in society where maybe they're a defiant child, because often ADHD is often paired with ODD. There's a whole separate thing with ODD that I talk about sometimes a little bit in the training we mentioned in the beginning, right? But often they get paired together essentially, right? And so you'll see this a lot of the times, especially with boys of color, just because there is that implicit bias, that internalized stigma that comes along with their race as well as ADHD, right? But it's often looked at as a behavioral issue rather than an attention regulation issue. So a lot of times you'll have someone with ADHD and you think they're going to be a bad person or they're not going to be obedient or what have you, right? And that's definitely not the case. In fact, we're often very intelligent. We're actually very capable. We can often come up with solutions that most people couldn't even dream of in their life, let alone come up with. I often say we're very good MacGyvers, if you've ever watched that show ever. If I even said that right, actually.
You
As you
did.
guys know, I'm talking about the point.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, like so you'll see a lot of these people with ADHD who are often labeled. As you get into the adult world, you think people with ADHD, our intelligence tends to get questioned, right? I can actually talk about this in live time right now. So right now with my brain, how it works, my speech is often like in my head ahead of where my mouth is, so sometimes it doesn't match up. So I have to actually slow things down and kind of readjust because I'm trying to think, oh my God, what is the word I'm trying to get out right now? So often because of that, a lot of people in my career, they've actually questioned my intelligence in the career space that I've been in. And so you'll see that a lot with adults with ADHD, but we're very capable of doing great things.
That's awesome. I love that. And one of the things that you mentioned was how it's difficult to focus, and some of the behaviors are seen as a behavioral issue and not necessarily, I forget what the other word was, like a learning or comprehension issue. Is that what you said?
Yes, yep, that's what I said.
Okay. So if somebody, I'm thinking about young adults, if somebody, or really any adult, if somebody is in college or trying to learn new things and it's hard to learn or comprehend, what are some ways that we can maybe help a client or help ourselves is if this is something that we're struggling with?
Could you repeat that me just a little bit? It was like cutting off just a little bit.
Okay. So if there's somebody who is struggling in school, maybe college, whatever, or in work, and other people are seeing this as a behavior issue, but it's really a comprehension issue, what is it that we can do to help that person?
I think as therapists and as social workers, using a person centered, strength based approach is going to be one of the best things in the world, which it sounds super cliche because we hear that all the time in the social work world, right? It's like there's got to be something new, right? But if you think about it, if you're being very person centered and learning how their brain actually works, how they operate, how they think, how they process thought, and you can get down to the nitty gritty like that, you're going to find really great results with them. So one of the things that we do in my practice is we take an executive functioning approach, mix it with a strength based approach. One of the things I'll do is I'll take inventory of 10 executive functioning skills. I have them rate them between 1 and 10, meaning 10 being the best, one being I'm super not great at the skill. And essentially, I see what their strengths are according to them, not according to me. Right. Because a big part of the work that I do is like, how do you actually feel about themselves? So for some people, part of executive functioning is actually helping the emotional control aspect. That's actually an executive functioning skill in and of itself. So if you have somebody who, let's say, is struggling to keep their house organized with ADHD and they have that mental load that's going on with them, that's an added layer of stress, anxiety, maybe depression that they're dealing with in some capacity, right? So if you can help them accept themselves and accept maybe this doesn't have to be changed, at least right now. Maybe it doesn't have to be changed at all. Maybe you're putting a lot of pressure on your own self right now to have this look a certain way, whether it's your parents have their closet or their house this way, or you saw one like this look like on Instagram. That's a common thing that ADHDers will do. We'll look at a bunch of houses and how people clean and how we organize. And we want it to look just like that. And we often can't get it that way, or we often can't maintain it that way. So we get very frustrated with ourselves. So part of my work is like learning how can we accept you at your capabilities, and more importantly, if you want to get, let's say, I'm just saying closet right now. I'm looking to the left, and my closet's like wide open. It's like really disorganized. So I'm thinking of a closet right now. But like, if you want to clean your closet, right, and you want to get it organized, why do you want it organized other than for aesthetic? And what functions are you trying to get out of it? So one person I recently did this with in my therapy sessions, no HIPAA and being recorded in this, obviously, but basically they wanted to be able to put more things in their closet. The way they had it organized, they couldn't put things in it. But they
Okay.
were so stuck on for weeks on, I want my closet to look this way, I want it to look pretty, I want it to look nice, that they weren't even focusing on like, what is the function of this thing?
I see. So being able to kind of reframe what it is that they're actually seeking, it sounds like that would reduce a lot of anxiety for somebody.
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh yeah. If you can help them reframe what exactly that they're looking to do, rather than have it be to standards just because everyone else is doing it, you're gonna have really good wins with them.
Perfect. So I'm curious if somebody who's listening wants to start doing private therapy and also help people who have ADHD, where is a good place for them to start? Do they need trainings? Do they need certain work experience, any kind of volunteer experience? If I'm someone in grad school and I'm like, I want to be like Justin, a private practice therapist for people who have ADHD, what do I do? Where do I start?
Yeah, so if you want to really start that off first, you can go and get your ADHD CCSP. So that's your clinical services provider certification for ADHD. There's a lot of different programs that host it. PASI is usually the one that's the cheapest, so it's super budget friendly. It's about a 30-hour course, and then you do your exam with it. And then I believe it says that they want you to attest that you've done at least 200 hours, either prior to completing the course, or you're doing it after you complete the course or what have you, right? And so that course ranges on PESI. The last time I checked, it was about $300. I was lucky enough to get it last year on a special for like 150, so it was super awesome. But I think
Nice.
300 is still pretty cheap for a certification. You don't necessarily need a certification to actually do the work of being a therapist for ADHD, but it is helpful. And from a marketing standpoint, it actually makes you look really Googleable because it's a certification that has the term ADHD in it. So a lot of people will be Googling you. So just a little marketing tip there. But that's my other love is marketing and business cash renals. But as far as if you want to just get started, period, like getting the work experience or anything like that, you can start by getting into private practice at a group practice that's more of like a family center or an agency that does family work, and request individuals with ADHD specifically that are coming in. That I truly believe that my hands-on experience and my personal experience is the most valuable thing. My certification was cool, but by the time I had all this life experience and this professional experience, I did it in reverse really. I was like, well, let me go get the certificate now because I just got thrown all the ADHD people. And I pretty much knew about 80 to 85% of what the course was saying at that point. So if you really want to get really good experience, go get the experience and just jump into these places, right? If you're in Michigan, we are hiring social workers, so please come on over and I will definitely bring you on. We're always looking for people, and as of this week, I'm completely full, and my therapists right now are almost completely full, so we will need people very soon here. And then a
Congratulations.
YouTube channel I recommend is the How to ADHD YouTube channel. It's hosted by Jessica McCabe. She is somebody who lives with ADHD. I believe she's in her 40s now. Side note about her, she has a wonderful TED Talk. I totally recommend looking up that TED Talk on YouTube because it makes me cry every single time. But she has a lot of good insights on ADHD as someone who not only has it, but also with her page, and her YouTube page and her Instagram too, and all that. She works with scientists, she works with doctors, she works with therapists to make her content. So she has a lot of good evidence-based tools on there. So you'll find a lot of good tips and tricks and hacks and things for people with ADHD that might actually more apply to someone more than just the standard get a planner and write a list down type of things that a lot of ADHDers are often facing when we come to therapy.
Right. Okay, great. Lots of really great tips there. I'm wondering, just for my own curiosity, what's your favorite part about doing the work that you do?
I think my favorite part is really helping the adult ADHDers. Like, my stuff very specifically in my work where I'm doing the therapist role, not the clinical direction role. Mine is now working with ADHDers who are very career oriented and business oriented. So they may have a business idea or they really want to advance their careers, but they feel really stuck. And so one of my favorite things is helping them untap their own potential, and learn that they actually have these tools within them. It just requires a little bit of rearranging. The other thing that I really love is helping individuals succeed in their career through getting formalized accommodations, just because that is such a big barrier that is ironically so simple. And that people think it's a whole formal process, which corporations make it to be, for sometimes good reasons, for other times gatekeeping and putting up intentional barriers, but that's a conversation for another day. I could rant about that one. But basically, what you do is you verify that this person has ADHD. And so in Michigan, we are one of the many states that allow social workers to diagnose. I think there's only 2 or 3 left, thank God. But essentially, I can put myself on a legal document, say, I truly believe this person has ADHD, here's why, and here's some accommodations that I believe will work for this person. You may be wondering how do we come up with the accommodations, by the way. It's very simple. When I take a person-centered approach, I ask that person, what do you think is going to work best for you? So it's very simple. I don't have to reinvent the wheel. I hear where they're struggling. I hear where they're at. And essentially, I just plug in the clinical language that works for the accommodation that they're actually looking for and seeking.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you. And I saw that you do have a podcast. You said that you have a course. Like, where can people find out more about you? Tell us about your podcast.
Yeah. So I have 2 podcasts right now because I just can't do anything, right? So I have the House of ADHD podcast, and so that podcast is on a hiatus, but it has a ton of good information on it. That's going to be more of like now and as needed podcast. Like if I feel like I have something to say, it's going to be on there. So just kind of look out for me to upload something basically. But there's a lot of good episodes that are already on there, and you'll get a lot of good information about ADHD on there. There's, I believe, an episode somewhere on there where it actually talks about how do I diagnose and assess ADHD. So that'll give you like a really good layout. In addition to this episode here, to get that, in addition to the training I have, right? So you have a lot of good information there. And then I have a new podcast with my friend Kelly. So her name's Kelly Hausman. We're 2 therapists actually in the Metro Detroit area, and we've decided that in June we're launching a new podcast, basically on just crazy Reddit stories, celebrity culture, just anything fun, really. I really just wanted something fun, honestly, outside of the ADHD space because I talk about it all day. So for me and her, we're making this podcast, and essentially we're going to release it in June. And it's basically a disassociation guilty pleasure podcast, and you can listen to us on your way home from work and just laugh with us and hang out.
Awesome. I love it. Well, thank you so much, Justin, for being here and for sharing your expertise. Where is the best place for people to reach out to you? I have your website in my show notes, so that is one place, but is there any other place that people should contact you at?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram and TikTok at ADHD therapist underscore J, spelled Jay. And then, of course, my private practice my private practice website, Superior Center. You can find that in the show notes. And, if you ever want your bosses to come have me train you, send them my website and I'll come on down or something.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Justin. It was great talking to you again.
Yeah, it was awesome talking.